tudo bem com vocês? Estamos de volta com o quadro Rede de Morfagem, nosso quadro de entrevistas poderosas aqui no canal. E hoje temos uma entrevista muito especial de, assim, uma pessoa que chegou agora na família Boom Studios, uma pessoa que chegou aqui agora nos reviews do canal. Mas antes da gente chegar nisso, eu preciso mostrar pra vocês uma novidade que talvez você já tenha percebido, que está aqui do meu lado, né? Este capacete lindo do Ranger Azul de Turbo, que nós recebemos de presente. Sim, gente, isso mesmo. Não sei se você já viu no meu vídeo de review, se saiu antes ou depois, enfim. Mas recebemos do Kevin, que é de Farroupilha, Rio Grande do Sul, que mandou pra gente de presente 2 capacetes, o da Ranger Rosa e o do Ranger Azul. Gente, vocês não têm noção de como a gente ficou completamente feliz e emocionado de receber isso. Vocês não têm noção mesmo. Que presentão, Kevin, muito obrigada. Tá aqui agora embelezando este belo vídeo de entrevista. Mas, gente, fica aqui embaixo o arroba dele pra você conferir, tá? Maravilhoso mesmo. E vamos lá para essa entrevista, né? Porque temos muito papo para bater agora. O nosso entrevistado de hoje é o Mat Groom, o novo roteirista de Mighty Morphin. Como vocês já estão cansados de saber aqui, né? O Ryan Parrott deixou esta mensal e está apenas na revista Power Rangers. E o Mat Groom assume Mighty Morphin, que é que eu faço review aqui no canal, e está dando já um show. Então, primeiramente, seja bem-vindo ao Mega Apoia Brasil. Muito obrigado por você ter aceitado participar dessa entrevista. E a nossa primeira pergunta é: qual é a sensação, como você se sentiu quando você saiu de um produtor de conteúdo de Power Rangers para uma pessoa que está trabalhando na produção agora, é roteirista de um quadrinho da Boom Studios de Power Rangers?
Thank you so much for having me, Anna. Yeah, the crossover has been really interesting. I think that when you're doing a podcast like Ranger Danger, it's about having fun, right? Like, it's laughing with friends, but you can't help but think about this world and this story and what you might do if you ever had the chance to sort of, share your take on it. And now that time has come. Now I have that opportunity. And there is some pressure there to find out what I have to contribute. But more than anything, I think it's fun. I think it's fun to be able to take this love that I have of this franchise and this knowledge I have of the franchise and bring a little bit of myself to it and try and express something about me and also about why I love these characters in this world and share it with everybody.
Pois é, a gente tá muito feliz que você tá aqui, mas você está com uma grande responsabilidade. Você assumiu uma mensal de Power Rangers. Não é uma coisa assim, né, um arco separado, é uma mensal. Como você está se sentindo com essa responsabilidade de receber das mãos do Ryan essa mensal para escrever essa história que, inclusive, você está mandando muito bem?
Yeah, I do. Of course, it's a big responsibility, but I think that for me personally, the responsibility comes from making sure that I find the right balance between being a fan and being a writer. Because I think as a fan, there are lots of questions that you might have about the world. There may be like favorite characters that you have, but also you have a responsibility to make sure that, first and foremost, you're telling a good story that's not just about answering little continuity questions or not just about featuring your favorite characters. It's about using that knowledge that I have and that affinity for the world, but using those little building blocks to create compelling and meaningful stories that resonate with people who maybe aren't even huge fans of the franchise or maybe might just be becoming fans of the franchise. So it's about balancing that and making sure that my sort of fan experience is a benefit and not a liability for the quality of the stories.
Pois é muito importante manter o equilíbrio entre essas duas coisas mesmo, você tá certíssimo, mas eu tenho uma perguntinha pra você que é: na edição de número 18 de Mighty Morphin, nós estivemos, assim, próximos a alguns elementos de Power Rangers Zell, né? Estamos aí falando do Rei Aradon, Império Máquina. Será que estamos nos aproximando de Zell? Né, um sinal? Ou ainda teremos mais histórias de Mighty Morphin até lá?
I think that, it probably won't surprise you to learn that I can't say terribly much about what's coming. We don't want to ruin stories for anybody. You want to experience things as they happen. But I guess what I would say is don't feel too confident that you can predict where anything is going with these stories. Yes, we may be seeing some elements that are more familiar from Zeo, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Zio's right around the corner, or, you know, that we're replacing Zio or redoing Zio. I think what it really is that, you know, we have the benefit of foresight. We know what's coming in range of continuity. We know all of the good material that's out there. So in certain situations, when we know that there are elements in the mythos that would be good building blocks or good elements to use for the stories, we can pull them forward and use them as long as it doesn't, you know, mess things up. So I think with things like the power chamber, we know from Power Rangers history that that's down there. It's underneath the command center, so we can use that when we need to. And I think something like King Aradon, when I was working on the story for Mighty Morphin, I knew that there was this character that was part of the larger Machine Empire story, but never appeared on screen. And that always felt like something that, you know, it was like unused material. It's something that would be really exciting to bring in as long as it was organic. And when I was developing the story about the command center's blown up because of the Eltarian War, Zed has temporarily left the solar system because of the Eltarian War. The Rangers are in a vulnerable position. That's a power vacuum. And I was thinking, it kind of like, you know, a crime family, like Dark Spectre's Syndicate is like a big intergalactic crime family. That sort of organization, they hate a vacuum. You know, if there's a power vacuum there, someone's going to want to seize it. And I was thinking, who would want to seize that vacuum? And yeah, King Aradon came to mind. So it was more about knowing all of the pieces of the mythos that are out there and pulling on the ones that we think will be most effective and exciting, rather than us trying to communicate that Zio is just around the corner or anything like that.
Olha, cuidado que aqui no Mega Apoio Brasil a gente é bom de prever coisas, a gente lê nas entrelinhas. Mas brincadeira, foi uma boa ideia você trazer o Rei Aradon para preencher esse espaço, esse vácuo de poder e criar assim mais lore pro personagem e também já para a próxima série, quando ela for apresentada no quadrinho. Mas o que a gente quer saber é que se o quadrinho vai ser usado, como já vem sendo, para poder usar essas histórias que ficam meio de lado na série de TV e criar mais histórias, assim como a Conferência de Paz, como nós vimos lá com a criação dos Omega Rangers. Você acha que o quadrinho vai fazer mais esse papel de cobrir esses momentos?
Yeah, again, I don't want to say too much about what's coming, but I think that we'll always be looking to utilize the material of the show in interesting ways. But this is actually something that I've discussed with Kyle Higgins, who obviously used to write Mighty Morphin. He's a good friend of mine. We co-write on Ultraman. And we've talked about how the danger of doing comics like the Power Rangers series is that you fall into the trap of just explaining different weird little things in the mythos. Like, oh, there was this unanswered question. You know, there's this space that we could get into. Let's patch this little hole in continuity. And I think that, you know, you could do that for a very long time, but that's not necessarily creating the best possible stories. You're just filling in technical holes, you know. But I do think there's a lot of value, I guess as I was just saying, in seeing all of the opportunities that are there and discovering new potential for story in them. And I think the Peace Conference is a great example of that. I think what Ryan has done with that has been masterful. But I suspect that for Ryan, that wasn't about answering the question of the Peace Conference. It was utilizing that exciting opportunity to tell a new story. So yeah, we're always going to keep trying to tell exciting new stories. Sometimes that'll pull heavily on the mythos of the show, using material that's there. Sometimes it'll be like totally brand new. You just have to wait and see.
Você está certíssimo, quando aparece uma oportunidade a gente tem que aproveitar, não é mesmo? Mas estamos nos eventos aí de Charge to 100. Em setembro teremos a edição de número 100 dos quadrinhos, aí realmente um grande evento. E a gente quer saber se você pode dar uma pista do que vem por aí.
It's gonna be a celebration. I think, you know, what you said about celebrating 100 issues, that's absolutely it. It's a little mind-blowing to me in some ways that we've reached 100 issues. I say we, like I've just started, but I think that Boom has gotten to 100 issues of Mighty Morphin collectively. It's so exciting. And Ryan is really leading this core story. It's an extension of the work that he's been doing this whole time. But I'm going to be working with him to tell a story or two of my own, but make sure that threads together with what he's doing and leads towards this big 100th issue celebration. I think that you're going to see some stuff that maybe people have been waiting a long time to see. And I think that we're going to take this opportunity to reflect on both where these characters have come on their journeys, but also where the Boom comics have come and how much they've contributed to the mythos. And then wrap that all up in a big, explosive, exciting 100th issue that Ryan's putting together. That I think there's some stuff in there that people are going to really dig. But again, I can't tell you too much about it.
Que isso, você já faz parte da família Boom Studios e aqui no Mega Power Brasil você já foi adotado por nós. Nós estamos muito animados agora depois disso que você falou e estamos de olho aí já para essas histórias que você vai escrever, então estaremos aguardando. Além de Power Rangers, você também trabalhou em Ultraman e recentemente participou do Supermassive com Kyle Riggins, Ryan Parrott e outros nomes. Como é conciliar todos esses projetos aí ao mesmo tempo?
My process is to not get a lot of sleep. And just keep powering through. As you said, I'm doing Ultraman with Kyle at Marvel, working on Inferno Go Red, which is part of the Massive verse, with Radiant Black that Kyle's doing, and of course Rogue Sun that Ryan's doing, and The Dead Lucky, which Melissa Flores, who is also part of the greater Power Rangers family, is working on. And there are also one or two other things that haven't been announced that I'm working on. And on top of that, I also do have a day job. So my process is to try and break everything up into chunks and try and get a lot done on one project before moving on to the other, because it's very important to me that these are very different types of stories that have different meanings and achieve different goals. And if I'm working on too much simultaneously, they can bleed into each other, which I don't want. But other than that, it's just leaning on your partners, taking advantage of the beautiful collaboration that is comics, keeping in touch with your artists and your editors, and planning forward as much as you can. And I guess probably the final thing is that making sure that you never lose sight of what makes that one particular project great. And I think there's so much about Power Rangers that obviously I have a lot of respect and affinity for. And these characters are so distinct. So as long as I keep coming back to the characters, I'll know that I can make Power Rangers work as its own entity. And then the same, obviously, for Ultraman, for Supermassive, for Inferno Go Red, and for the other things.
Olha, eu fiquei cansada só de ouvir você, mas estou aqui de olho nesses novos projetos que você tá falando aí. E olha, de coração, reserva um tempo pra dormir que faz bem. Dormir é bom demais. E falando em bom demais, nós tivemos alguns crossovers, né, que aconteceram com Power Rangers. Tivemos Tartarugas Ninjas, agora estamos tendo Godzilla. E eu queria saber de você, se você pudesse escolher aí uma equipe de Power Rangers e uma franquia para fazer um crossover, qual seria?
Okay. Well, I think I have an answer here. It's probably not going to be a terribly popular one. It will be very difficult to execute, and I'm sure will never ever happen for about a million different reasons. But I think a Steven Universe and Power Rangers crossover would be absolutely fascinating. I think there's a surprising amount of crossover between the two, particularly the further you get into Steven Universe. Towards the end, there's a pretty big Megazord reference there. But I think that the Steven Universe's bombast and scale and enthusiasm and sort of like larger than life action, all based around a very human core and like human relationships. There's a lot of crossover with Power Rangers, even if they are aimed at sort of slightly different groups in some ways. I think that if you take the fusions of Steven Universe and mix that with Morphin Grid energy, and you took gems and Zords and tried to find the connection between those things, I think it would be fascinating. Maybe not to everybody's taste, but probably quite to my taste, and at least it would be unique, I think.
Realmente muito inusitado. Eu, particularmente, não tinha pensado nunca nessa união, mas depois que você falou, eu fiquei curiosa, tá? pra ver algo assim. Então, se você escrevesse, ó, eu super leria empolgada. Mas muito obrigada pela sua participação aqui na entrevista, a gente ficou muito feliz de te ter. E eu queria que você deixasse um recado para os fãs brasileiros que acompanham os reviews aqui agora, seus, sendo escritos por você aqui no Brasil, no Mega Power Brasil.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely to chat to you, and I love the chance to connect with fans. And I actually have a very special place in my heart for Brazil in particular. I've never been. I really want to one day. But my first major work in comics was an image series called Self-Made. You actually see the poster for it. That's the cover of the trade paperback up behind me. And I worked on that with co-creator and artist Eduardo Ferragato, and also colorist Marcelo Costa. And they're both from Brazil. And in fact, we worked Brazil into the story of the comic as we did Australia, my home. So I have a lot of love for Brazil and Brazilian people just through that experience. And I also know that Brazil has an outsized love of tokusatsu that I share. I think, from what I understand, you guys really love Ultraman, and you know, obviously a big Ultraman guy. You can see him up there on my shelf. You love Power Rangers, and obviously I love Power Rangers. And all of the other like tokusatsu properties, like Kamen Rider. I'm just now truly diving into Kamen Rider, but I love it. So I feel like there's a lot of shared sensibility. So yeah, my dream is the next couple of years, come down to our convention in Brazil, meet Eduardo and Marcelo, but also meet all of you and share in your love and enthusiasm for Rangers and all things tokusatsu. So yeah, thanks so much again for having me.
Olha só que a gente vai pedir pro Marcelo Costa trazer você, hein? Mas você já está super convidado, vai ser super bem-vindo em terras brasileiras e, claro, aqui no Mega Power Brasil. E espero que quando você vem, a gente consiga se encontrar, né? Também quero aí se encontrar pessoalmente, pegar um autógrafo seu num quadrinho. Vamos fazer isso acontecer. Mas muito obrigado pela sua presença. Galera, espero que vocês tenham gostado dessa entrevista aqui da Rede de Morfagem. Coloca aqui embaixo qual foi a sua resposta favorita, se você está empolgado com os projetos, porque eu estou. Vem coisa por aí, pelo que ele está dizendo. E também siga a gente nas nossas redes sociais, no @MegaPowerBrasil, Twitter e Instagram, para você ficar por dentro de tudo em primeira mão. E, claro, venha conhecer o nosso APOIASE, nosso projeto de financiamento coletivo, onde você pode ajudar a gente a crescer financeiramente e apoiar esse canal para que ele continue existindo e crescendo, trazendo mais conteúdo. Aqui embaixo no link apoia.se/megapowerbrasil, você escolhe um valor e vem fazer parte dessa galera que ajuda a gente, como Rafael de Paula e Rodrigo Lins, que já estão nos apoiando. Galera, é isso, a gente se vê muito em breve e que o poder o proteja.